Welcome to EPG Padasala. Under the Indian culture, the principles and methods of archaeology, I will talk on heritage management. My name is Dr. D. Dayalan, ex-director, Archaeology Survey of India. My basic concern on this heritage management is to talk how the management is work on conservation of the archaeological monuments and also the various other aspects of archaeological studies. The need for heritage management is to protect our cultural heritage because India is full of cultural heritages. It needs a kind of a strong management program to control and manage the archaeological heritages. Otherwise, it is very difficult to control all the things. And what do you mean heritage management? Actually, heritage management is the involvement of the people, particularly those who are the stakeholders and the people they are actually involved in the heritage managements, and also organizing information pertaining to the various heritage managements, particularly what are the heritage, why it should be preserved, what is the heritage gives to the people, all these informations to be put together so that the management can be worked out properly, how the management can be done. And the main purpose of heritage management, as I told, it is actually the important to protect this heritage management, basically because it's all the repository of Indian culture, and also this is all one of the very important mode for the economical boost of our country, because many of this heritage, it's all important center of tourism, and tourism is boost because of our heritage, cultural heritages. We have many cultural heritages, both tangible and intangible cultural heritages, and unless otherwise there is not a proper management system, many of the management of the heritages goes out, and we can see the poor condition of many of the monuments because there is no adequate resources, there is no adequate management system to monitor them. The recent years, there are a lot of threat to the heritage managements. Both natural threat as well as the man-made threat. Particularly the urbanization is one of the major threat for the heritage structures, particularly which are unprotected. And also there are many other natural and man-made threats like episode industrial developments, urbanization, and then unsustainable tourism. These are some of the man-made problems to the heritage. Apart from that, there are other natural problems like earthquake, then tsunami, then landslide. These are all some of the problems which is creating a problem to our heritages. In order to overcome all these problems and also safeguard our heritage, there should be a strong management system to look after these problems, to address these problems, and also appraise the stakeholders how it can be preserved without interfering, without hindrance to these sort of problems, issues. The management system is basically look after the active involvement of the partners and stakeholders, because there are many stakeholders which is directly or indirectly involved in the heritage management. We have to involve these people, and then a thorough knowledge of the ancient monument should be very necessary, and it should be spared, or it should be intimated to all the stakeholders. There should be a cycle of planning, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation, and feedback should be there, and allocation of necessary resources. It is also one of the very important thing. Capacity building is again very important for the heritage management, and then all these heritage management activities should be very transparent, and it should be very functional and also very effective. And coming to the cultural heritage management, it can be dealt in different topics, particularly the conservation management, that is one, and then disasters management, management of the ambience of the monument, tourism and visitors management, management of the urban development, pressure and encroachments, sustainable use of usage and rehabilitation of the monument, and management of illegal activities in and around the monument, and the management for generating funds, particularly for the monument which is unprotected, and also a creation of capacity building. So these are all the various topics we can dealt on this heritage managements. Coming to the conservation management, There are different things to be taken into account before taking up any conservation management. First of all, we should know about the complete study of the various aspects of the monument, particularly the location of the monument. We have to find out where the monument is located so that our conservation management should go according to that, whether it is a coastal region, urban region, rural area, or industrial area. This should be taken into account before taking up any management system. Similarly, the climate, whether it's a dry climate, rain climate, or the wet climate, that also be taken into account. Then the method of construction. What type of the construction methodology has been used, whether it's a temple, mosque, church, stupas, each and every type of structure will have its own type of conservation methodologies. That also to be studied, and there has been a extensive database of all these informations. And also the material used for the construction, because different material has been used for the construction of the ancient structures in India. Particularly wood has been used, brick, stone, mud, stucco, and many other material has been used. That also to be taken into account. And also the causes of deterioration, because there may be environmental causes, biological causes, man-made causes, or natural causes. So what are the causes for the deterioration of the monument, and also status of the deterioration, whether it is initial stage or the advanced stage, this also to be taken into account. All these parameters should be very necessary for preparing an heritage management or the conservation management. And also in the case of the caves or monolithic, we have to find out what is the nature of the rock and what are the other environmental problems to that. And the conservation management should always see the authenticity and integrity of the monument, and then historical and the artistic significance of the monument should be preserved. It is a very prime and foremost important for any conservation management. And also we have to create a kind of a traditional building material details of the various monuments, particularly like mortar, brick, plaster, paintings. So we have to create a database of all this traditional material used for the conservation work, and also what are the methodologies has been adopted in construction of the ancient buildings. That also to be taken into account. That also be taken into a kind of data for creating a heritage conservation management. And coming to one or two example, if I say, for example, in the case of Taj Mahal, we can say the materials come from different parts, because the Taj Mahal, you know, these constructed marble, and some of these adjoining building is constructed in sandstone. And even for the beautiful inlay works, for which these semi-precious stones and precious stones has came from different part of the world. So this sort of data is very much important for the preparation of conservation management, because if anything goes wrong, if anything to be new creation has to be made, or some conservation work or restoration work has to be done, this data will be helpful to procure or quarry from the original place from where the stones has come from. Particularly in the case of Taj Mahal, the marble has came from Makrana and the neighboring area, whereas the sandstone came from very close proximity of the Agra, like Fatehpur Sikri, Tanpura, Bansi Pahadpur, all the places. And inlay work, as I told, it has come from various parts of the world. Nearly 30 to 35 varieties of inlay has been used, semi-precious stones or precious stones has been used for the inlay works in Taj Mahal. So you can see here how the Taj Mahal looks like. It is the main mausoleum is made of marble, whereas the inner core is of brick. Outer veneering is made of marble, whereas the adjoining structure, it is of sandstone. Even the sandstone also, there are different tint of sandstone has been used. Maybe it's a red, dark red, pink color, or pale red, like that. There are different sandstone has been used, and it's all come from different quarries. And you can see the inlay works. How actually the inlay works, very important thing is a very Taj Mahal is famous for this inlay works. When the marble surface, they actually they make a groove, and then they fix the stones of different colors so that it looks like as if like a flower or like some sort of decoration. All the things they created not by painting but using different colors stones. For these, they procure stones, the semi-precious, precious stones from various parts of the world. And you can see different colors you can see in this inlay works. All are come from different parts. The same thing in stupa at Sanchi in Madhya Pradesh, where actually this stupa has been constructed using different sandstone. Actually, the whole complex is made of sandstone, but also within the sandstone, some of the sandstone is come from the nearby Vidisha. It is a little pale grey color, particularly the Toranas. They want to make the carvings. For that, they procured the stones from outside of Sanchi. Whereas the main the main dome of the stupa is been made of the stones which has collected nearby area. And even some of the sculptures which is having the pink spot, that is actually come from Mathura. And the Asokan pillar, which was originally found close to Sanchi stupa, it was come from Chunar in Uttar Pradesh. Actually, it is a very tough site of sandstone, and is having it is of buff color, and also it is having black spot. So at least Sanchi stupa, they used nearly 3 or 4 varieties of sandstone, and many of them is come from different places. And we have to, the heritage management also to look after how the construction has been made in the ancient period. Particularly Bhojpur is one of the best example. The Bhojpur temple is the unfinished one, but still it gives very important mechanism was used while constructing the temples. Here we can see the ram. Actually that was used to carry the stones from the quarry area to the top of the place where they are working. And also you can see nearby there is another place where there is a quarry site, where you can see the different stages of carvings has been made, and also there are a lot of drawings which gives details how the carving has to be made, and what are the sizes the carving has to be done. From there it has been transported through the ramp to the top of the place where the work has been executed. And conservation management, as I told, we have to make first identify the whether it is a long-term management, long-term conservation work or short-term conservation work on the basis of the conservation problems. So we have to decide that one, and then we have to find out whether the renovation has to be done, reconstruction has to be done, or restoration has to be done, and how much extent the renovation restoration has to be done. That also to be kept in mind. And also there should be chalked out well in advance. And there should be a proper mechanism for monitoring the conservation works, because it should be very meticulously monitor. Otherwise the conservation will go in a different way. And particularly in the case of dismantling any structure for reconstruction, it should be always taken at the last step. It is at the most we have to try to see that the building should be restored as per the original without completely dismantling and reconstructing it. And coming to disasters management, because our monument faces a lot of disasters problems like earthquake, tsunami, as I told, and we should prepare for the disasters management, how the monument can be preserved without affecting this sort of hazards. Particularly, one should know what sort of hazards the monument can face, and how we can tackle that sort of hazards. And they should have a proper idea about the disasters. And that's why we need a proper disasters management to look after the conservation or the management of these monuments. Particularly in the case of seismic zone area, we have to see seismic zone is in map of India. On that basis, we can identify what are the monuments falls in the very sensitive zone in the seismic region, and on the basis of that we can take some precautionary measures to safeguard that structures. In the case of the man-made disasters like fire and then pollution, all the things, there should be a kind of proper legal backing, and also there should be a kind of an awareness among the public to see that it should be stopped to that extent, so that there should not be any sort of man-made disaster to happen in the monuments. We can see some of the disasters which has been happened recently. It is in Gujarat. One of the Chhatri has been totally collapsed because of this earthquake, and also the other structure we can see the cracks has been developed because of this the earthquake in Gujarat recent last decade. And actually, coming to this disasters management, one should be prepared for this natural as well as man-made disasters, and there be a kind of an adequate training, particularly the site managers who is looking after the monument, and also there should be a proper coordination with various organizations which is looking after the disasters management, and they should be coordinated as and when immediately for the quick action. And also there is a mechanism for the salvage operation, salvage of cultural heritages when any natural and man-made disasters happen. And another thing is very important for the safeguard of the monuments is the management of the ambience of the monument and also the historical setting of the monuments. Unless otherwise the surrounding is not properly maintained, it ultimately results to the structural as well as conservation problem of the monuments. That's why all the hazard development in the surrounding area should be kept aside, so that the monument conservation can be done in a proper manner without this. And particularly the constructions which is coming very close to the monuments, some of the constructions even hide the structures, the ancient structures, and even some of the modern construction has been made just abutting to the modern buildings, I mean ancient buildings. This sort of activities completely mar the view of the monument and also make many conservation problems. So in order to overcome all these things, there should be a proper mechanism, management system to look after the environment around the monument and also take appropriate action to stop such sort of unauthorized or illegal activities in the close vicinity of the heritage structures. Particularly in the early period, most of the monuments have been constructed, or any heritage building actually constructed in certain ambience. So that ambience is very important historical point of view. For example, in the case of Buddhist monuments, many of the Buddhist structures are very close to the perennial river system, and also it is a very peaceful atmosphere. And same way in the case of forts, it's always in a position of very strategic location, and even the temples in the early period, it is having a very much a tally with the environmental atmosphere. Even we can say the ancient settlement in the early period, or most of the ancient settlements are made on the banks of the rivers, on the banks of or close vicinity of the rivers. And here you can see how the Buddhist monuments has been located in a very panoramic location and is very close to the perennial water sources. So this is the historical setting of the monuments. Actually, monument cannot be seen the monument alone. We have to see the environment and also the historical setting of that, and it is necessary to preserve the historical setting of that. And coming to this, these Ajanta caves, the beautiful caves actually be located in a very panoramic and natural environment. And coming to again in Taj Mahal, we can see the Taj Mahal cannot be visualized as the Taj Mahal alone, because Taj Mahal is conceived, planned and constructed to face the natural landscape of Yamuna river. So the Yamuna river is also a part and parcel of Taj Mahal, and this is an historical setting at Taj Mahal. So anything happened to this historical setting may create an havoc, and also it gives a distorted picture to the whole history of this monument. Next. And you can see how Taj Mahal is located. You can see on the background there is a big garden known as Mehta Bagh, and the other side is the river is flowing in between. So this is the historical setting of a monument. So this is very important. Not only the conservation of the monument, even the historical setting is also important to see the historical the condition at the time of its construction. And overcome all these sort of problems, particularly in the ambience of the monuments. The government of India has issued an order, or they have passed an act known as a Ancient Monument Archaeological Sites Remains Amendment and Validation Act 2010, in which they were actually mainly meant for the protection and the preservation of the environment, particularly from the regulated and the prohibited area. 100 meter has been declared as a prohibited area from the monument, and further 200 meters has been declared as a regulated area for any constructional activities. Apart from that, the court is also issued many orders for regulating the activities in the prohibited and regulated area of the monuments. And there is a bylaws has been created for the monuments to see how the ambience has to be created. Suppose any construction has to come, how the construction has to come, and how it should be aptly matched with the environment of the monuments. For that, bylaws has been created for many of the monuments to see the authenticity and integrity of the monument, and its environment should be preserved in a presentable manner. In certain monuments, there will be a site management plans to look after not only for the conservation issues and also the ambience of the structures. For example, the case of Ajanta, Ellora, Hampi, and then many other monuments, we have the site management plan addressing all these issues, not only for the conservation issue, even for the environmental issue, how it can be addressed, and what are the activities can be taken to preserve the ambience in a proper manner. And apart from this, there is a separate department, the Archaeological Survey of India. There is one horticulture wing, which is mainly to see there should be a proper creation of ambience around the monument by putting the gardens and also plants around the monument to see this thing is in a presentable way. And here we can see because of there is not a proper management system, we can see how the modern structure has cropped up very close to the monument, which give a very not only ugly look and it's completely marred or completely give a kind of a very unpleasant atmosphere around the monuments. You can see there are a lot of buildings has come, and even they put a garbage, they put a drainages very close to the monument. This gives a very bad impression to the whole scenario. You can see there is there are a lot of brush, other things. It also create a nuisance to the monument. And another important thing is visitors management plan. Actually, nowadays tourism is one of the major economic sector in the worldwide, because tourism, many of the countries actually this tourism is one of the basic economy for the countries. Even India, the tourism is essentially revolving around the cultural properties, because the cultural property is one of the major tourism generating things in India. Particularly 70 to 80% of the tourism in India, particularly the foreign tourism, is because of our monuments. The cultural tourism play a vital role in conserving and realizing the value of our cultural heritage, because the cultural tourism is very important, not only the promoting the tourism but also conserving and also making to understand the real value of the heritage. And the cultural tourism is actually a dynamic, has to play a dynamic role for cultural exchange and promoting the cultural diversity of our India. And as I told, this cultural tourism provide many things to India, particularly this tourism, particularly the cultural tourism, give many things to the public. For example, the tourism gives generate economic value and contributing the local and regional national income, because it is one of the very great economic value. Many of the monument, because of the monument, the tourists come to the spot and gives economic boost to the local community and also regional and national wide. And it also generating a lot of job opportunities in the local community and also overall India. And also it gives a kind of a image, raising the image profile of the particular village, and also creating infrastructure. Because of the tourism, that whole area will get infrastructure developments. And other important thing is It gives the local community to sell the local products, because the tourists come there and they live there and they used to purchase the local products. So in other way, the local craft, local traditional products will be sold out because of the tourism. And these are all the very important things tourism gets. Otherwise, the monument is not just like a heritage alone, but it is actually giving a boost to the economy of the national wide as well as the local wide. And of course, the tourism also give problems to the cultural heritage and also the community, local community. Particularly, the local community face many problems like congestion, wears and tires, disturbance, and sense of displacement of the local community. This happened many places. And how we can overcome all these problems? Because we have to safeguard the monument. At the same time, for the economic point of view, we have to promote the tourism. So that is known as the sustainable tourism. It is the mechanism, or this is a kind of management to promote the cultural tourism without affecting the protection of the cultural property and also maintain its authenticity and integrity. So this is the mechanism, or this is known as the sustainable tourism. In how we can be attained, it can be, we have to find out how the monument have that carrying capacity, and we have to manage that one on the basis of that, and also the control the visitors movement and restricting the areas which is vulnerable or to decay or deterioration. That is also one of the very important thing. And also the coordination with various stakeholders, because we have particularly the tourist operators, tourist guides, local communities, and then the operator, the management, the local management, all the things to put together to see how a tourism management can be, arrived. It should be very sustainable to look after the tourism as well as to see that monument should be preserved without any disturbance. And we can see how the unruly tourism is creating havoc in the monuments. But you can see there are a lot of crowds, and this needs some kind of a control, or some sort of a mechanism should be there to see how best to promote the tourism, and also there should not be any sort of hindrance to the structures. The objective of the sustainable tourism is to maintain high level tourist satisfaction. Otherwise, the tourists will not visit the site. So we should see to high level tourist satisfaction should be there. At the same time, the tourists should be having a experience, meaningful experience should be there, and the tourists should be made to understand about the importance of the cultural heritage. Otherwise, it should be a kind of awareness should be created, and there should be a kind of interaction with the social and local community. Particularly some of the monuments, it is also a part of tourist management. In the monuments, whenever the tourists visit, there should be a creation of tourist infrastructure in the close vicinity of the monument or within the monument. So this is a kind of a tourist infrastructure to be created for the promotion of the tourist, particularly toilets, clock room, portable drinking water, parking lot, audio guide facilities, ticket booth, if it is a ticketed monument, souvenir counters, information center, proper signage, burial signage, particularly for the visually disabled persons, chair cars, wheelchairs, and battery operated vehicles for the disabled person as well as senior citizens. It shall be kept for the tourist facilitation. You can see some of the signages. Actually, the signage is very important. It should give message to the people. At the same time, it should not be any hindrance to the visitors movement as well as the view of the monuments. In Taj Mahal, these are some of the signage has been used. It should be very aptly matched with the environment and also to the fabric of the structure. And these are some of the tourist infrastructure created in monuments, for the drinking water, drainage, wheelchair for the senior person or physically challenged persons. And then we have to create a kind of a visitors interpretation center for the better understanding of the monuments. So this visitors interpretation center should tell to the public about the history, architecture, all the events associated with the monument, conservation efforts, and other relevant information, and also if possible there can be a screenplay or demonstration or any other video audio system that should be made available to the in the visitors interpretation center, so that the visitors can have a better understanding of the monument and also the importance of our cultural heritage. There can be a possibility to create a kind of a free distribution of booklets or pamphlets for the visitors about the monument and history, and also do and don'ts within the monuments. That's also very important. This is one example how the tourist interpretation center can be created in the close proximity of the monuments. This is actually from Taj Mahal. One of the building very close to Taj Mahal, it has been conserved without creating any new additions or alteration, and it can be aptly prepared in such a way to accommodate all the tourist facilities within this complex. And you can see this, the other side is Taj Mahal, and this is actually created to give all the tourist facilities within this thing, so that people can avail all these tourist facilities. From there they can go to the monument, have a free look to the monument without any problem. And then certain monuments, particularly the unprotected monuments, they need a sustainable usage and rehabilitation of the monuments. Actually, many of the monuments which is not unprotected, either the local owners, they either completely renovate the thing or demolish and reconstruct over that, and due to that, because of the ignorance, because of the various other reasons, and due to that many historical buildings has lost. So there should be a kind of a rehabilitation of the ancient structure in such a manner the ancient fabric of the structure should be maintained without without changing the fabric or without changing the at least the outer the character of the monument or the structure, and this can be reused in different purposes. And we can see this sort of mechanisms, particularly in the many places, particularly in Rajasthan. Many of the palaces, many of the heritage buildings has been converted a kind of a hotels, souvenir shops or shopping malls, without changing the original character, or even changing the at least the outer facade of the structures can be maintained as it is. Here we can see one of the example how the ancient heritage building has been converted into a hotel without changing the fabric or the facades of the structure. And then there is some illegal activities, particularly unauthorized activities in the close vicinities of the monument. This will give a kind of a unpleasant experience to the visitors. So it is necessary to control this sort of illegal or unauthorized activities in the close vicinities of the structure, like kind of the hawkers, toots, and then unauthorized guides, photographers, and heavy traffic congestions, and then stray cattle movement. These are some of the hindrances which give an unpleasant experience to the visitors. There should be a proper mechanism, or there should be a proper management system to see that it should be eliminated, so that the visitors can have a better understanding or better experience while visiting the monument. And here you can see how badly the environment created, because there is an hawker very close vicinity of the monument, they are selling the things, and also there is a stray animals, they are going very close to the monument, even parking the rickshaws and then the various vehicles very close to monument. This give kind of a very bad environment and also unpleasant experience to the visitors. Another thing is that the management of generating funds, particularly the monuments or the heritage structures which is not protected by the government, that needs a kind of a support, financial support for keeping it as per the original. Because we have thousands and thousands of heritage buildings in India, and it's not possible to look after all the heritage building by the government, because many of them either it may be state or central government. Apart from that, there is some of the buildings are looked after by the Hindu Religious Endowment Board or the Waqf Board, And apart from that, there are a good number of monuments or the heritage buildings which is neither with the state government nor with the central government nor with any other government agencies. So these sort of buildings should be looked after without changing the original fabric by generating funds for keeping it as per the original. For that, National Cultural Fund is one of the scheme where money can be generated from the donors to see that the heritage building can be preserved. And in addition to that, the local authorities or the local administration or the local corporations, they should lead a kind of activities. They could generate funds for promoting or conserving the unprotected buildings in a presentable way. And even in the case of certain places, the NGOs and other organizations also come forward for preserving the monuments or the heritage buildings without changing the original character of it. And another important thing is the creation of capacity building. And actually, it is very important. Our monument, particularly the conservation or any management, it is a multidisciplinary and also scientific approach. So periodically, the persons who are involved in the conservation or the management of the heritage, they should be properly trained, and then their skill has to be up to date. And the professional should be taken in a very effective step to update their knowledge in order to tackle the various problems in the conservation and preservation and management of the heritages. Particularly universities and educational institutions across the India should encourage imparting training to the professionals, and particularly even in the colleges and the universities, particularly education institutes, they should have a kind of training programs for creating capacity building and also creating awareness among the public, particularly the students, about our cultural heritage. There should be a collaborative programs from various organizations as well as laboratory to expertise the experience in the field. And another thing is, India is very traditionally skilled in various conservation and management of heritages, because India is full of traditionally skilled people, and the government as well as the public should see that the traditional skill, people who are having traditional skill to be promoted, and this should be very much useful for the preserving of our cultural heritages. And there should be a kind of research, higher studies on heritage management, and there should be an organization of seminars, and also some sort of creative activities should be there, particularly the universities and education institute, for creating a capacity building. And this is some of the traditional skill which is still available in India. This should be promoted and it should be preserved. Here we can see the inlay works, how they are making the inlay works in Agra. Actually, this is one of the things which you can see in Taj Mahal. Summing up the whole thing, now you can understand the cultural heritage is infinite and non-removable, vulnerable to damage for destruction, because it is a renewable one. Unless otherwise it is preserved, it cannot be renewable. So it is very important to preserve our cultural heritage, and heritage management is one of the main mechanism to see how the heritage building can be preserved without any disturbance for the posterity. And safeguarding our heritage is a fundamental right for all the people, and it is the duty of each and every person to see, not only the management, even the public is responsible to see that the monument should be preserved for the posterity. Thank you very much.